Thank you so much for joining me today, Aviva. I'm really looking forward to our conversation about friendship. So I remember a few years ago, many years ago, my daughters are in their 20s now, but I remember one of them coming back when she was little. She came home, she walked in, and she just announced to the world, I'm not friends with so-and-so anymore. And I thought it was amazing because children have this amazing way of dealing with what serves them in life and what doesn't serve them in life in a very matter-of-fact manner. There's no nuance. At times there's no empathy. But she was clever because what happened was she came to me and she was just like, this is what doesn't work in this friendship. This is what makes me sad. And so I just don't want this person in my life anymore, Mummy. And so please don't make any more play dates with her, Mummy. And that was it.
In those words? Just like that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously there was a build-up beforehand. But when you think about the way children behave and the way we are, we seem to make our lives much more complex, I think. What's your experience been?
To me, that sounds very freeing because your daughter is concentrating on the essence of what a friendship is. And I think that as we get older, we take on so many things that we're supposed to do and the way we're supposed to be. And then we end up having friends or friendships that go on much, much longer than they should because there's so many reasons why perhaps they've run their course and they shouldn't continue. So she seems to have grasped that at a very young age. And if she continues with that in life, she may find that she's clear about what friendships are, all the different types of friendships. And I mean, there's a tendency to say, well, okay, well, is she just using people for what she can get out of them? But maybe she's looking at it in a way that it's what meaning it has for her, what the friendship meaning has. And for whatever the reason that she decided she didn't want to be friends with this girl, boy, whatever, the meaning was no longer there for her. And maybe that's probably what we should focus on more when we look at our friendships.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the friendships that you have in your life. We know from the research out there that our friendships, they probably contribute more to our well-being than our intimate relationships, our intimate personal relationships. I think that's what the most recent research is showing. And so with that in mind, tell me a little bit about the friendships that you have in your life. Are they friends who you've had for years? Are they friends who are more recent? You know, I know that for me personally, I'm in my late 40s and I'm a very different person to who I was in my teens, in my 20s, in my 30s. I've been on this constant evolution, I would say. And as a result, I don't have a lot of my old friends, but also I moved around a lot. I moved countries. So a lot of my old friends, I don't have those childhood friends around me in the way that some of my other friends have.
I've moved from, in my early adolescence, to England. So those friends were suddenly no longer part of my life. And then I made new ones. But then, you know, as it evolved, then I reconnected, actually on social media, funnily enough, to the old ones who are, they're there now as it kind of holds on to the memories that we have as a child. And we can connect. It doesn't have to be, you know, a daily, whatever. It could be once a year, once every 2 years. It could just be Happy New Year. But they still have a lot of meaning and there's still a lot of warmth from those. And then when I went to boarding school, I was there for 2 years and incredibly, I have a huge circle still from that time of my life. And again, it's one of those situations where I can go anywhere in the world. And if one of these friends happens to be there, I can just say I'm in town. And they will always be that effort to make time to see people. Whereas I find that here, living in England, for most of my life, that's different. It's more like we don't have to make an effort because it's just convenient not to, if you see what I mean. There's less effort because you're just there. So actually, I'm beginning to feel now that I'm into sort of the well into my middle age and beyond, that those friends from the past possibly have more meaning for me now, because they put more, there's a little bit more effort especially when you don't see people here all the time. I feel that there's a genuine effort from those people from my past, a real effort, possibly because we bonded over our youth.
Yeah.
And the growing experiences, rather than people that we meet later on in our lives where it's either work or whatever, and maybe we were friends because it helped while we were working or whatever, and then you move on to something else and you change and you're no longer in those industries or whatever it is. And then perhaps there was a lot of stress around the time, and so we lose those.
Okay, so many things that you're making me think about. So firstly, what I'm getting from you is the fact that a shared experience that you have from your youth has helped you to maintain your friendships, okay, and helped you to reconnect with friends from old. And I think you're a bit like me. We're from that era where there wasn't social media to keep us connected. So I know when I left England, you had to write letters because my parents were never going to pay for me to be phoning my friends from, at the time, Mexico City and then France and whatever. That just wasn't going to happen at the age of 12, 13 years old. So I couldn't write letters all the time, and we were traveling a bit, so I couldn't stay connected to my old friends. Whereas now that we have social media, you can. It's that thing of you've got that shared experience, shared youth. Circumstances is what tore you apart, you ended your friendship, so to speak, that day-to-day friendship. But then the thing which has helped you to maintain it is effort. It sounds to me that that's incredibly important to you, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I know I make a lot of effort.
Right.
But then I'm not saying my situation is unique, but it is a little different from a lot of people, especially a lot of people who I'm friends with, in that I'm single. I never married. I don't have children. Yeah. So I think there is also that perception, well, isn't it great that Aviva makes so much effort? Well, and then there's something behind it. Sometimes I might feel like they think, well, because she doesn't have the responsibilities. And those ones I tend to weed out because I just think, well, actually, I'm just as busy as everybody, but I make the effort because I want to. And so when I realized that the friends who I am making all that effort with are not, I can be quite blunt sometimes, because it's a feeling. It's a feeling of like, okay, if there's something amiss in this, then I would prefer to know.
Okay.
And so I know that a lot of people have a problem with saying what it is. Saying, well, actually, whatever, I just think we've moved on in our life and maybe I don't feel your company is something I seek anymore, which is also fine. I think all those are fine, and I think people should be. I mean, for example, if someone who's been single for a long time and then suddenly is now connected with somebody, and the relationship becomes more serious, you clearly do not have time to spend with all your other single friends. I mean, that's normal, and that's understandable.
Absolutely,
get it. But then eventually you can reconnect because you've now established that relationship and it's sort of more stable. But I have found that with these situations, sometimes the partner makes a choice.
Okay.
And then that obviously impacts the friendships that these people may have had in their past. Because either the partner decides, well, not so sure about this person.
Okay.
Or not so sure about all these people.
Okay. All right, so, wow, so many different things going on here. Firstly, effort, important to you. It would seem as if loyalty is another thing that I'm hearing from that. Because a friend, in theory, a friend who's been, and I'll say a long-standing friend, when they get into a relationship with someone else and all of a sudden that somebody else is turning around saying, I'm not crazy about this friend of yours. And that affects the relationship that you've got with that long-standing friend. That's one, hurtful if they're going to go with their partner's desire for you to have less contact time with them. And it kind of breaches that that loyalty of, if you are my friend, irrespective of what your partner says, you will remain my friend.
Correct. But I also feel that in their evolution, if the partnership is very important to them, then I have to respect that.
Yeah.
And what am I going to do? Say, well, okay, but why doesn't that mean we can?
Yeah.
I mean, I can try in a subtle way, but if that's the dynamic and the relationship is very important, I take my cue. Yeah. It's fine. Of course it's hurtful.
Yeah.
And it's not something that somebody was going to say, well, X, Y, and Z doesn't like you, so I can't be friends with you anymore, because that's almost childish. However, that's really what happens.
Okay, but you say you're calling it childish, but you literally just said that for you, you're a person who's quite blunt, and the one thing you like is for people to be honest with you, right? Honesty is a value, it would seem. Because right now, when I listen to you, I'm picking up on the values which you hold dear in your friendships, right? Effort is one, honesty is another one. And so if a friend isn't able to be honest with you, and sometimes we're not honest, I'm not always honest with my friends if there's something going on, and this is on me, not on them. This is me saying, I don't have the guts, or I don't want to hurt you, or there's so many different reasons why we're not honest with our friends. Not everybody is as blunt as you.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you need your friends to be as blunt as you? Do they need to match you?
They can be as tactful as they want, but I would like to know. So if I call somebody out, and it's not like, oh, you said X, Y, and Z. No, if I notice a distancing, I will wait and I will try. And if I notice the distancing continues, then I eventually will say, is something up? Because what you're doing is very hurtful. Is there something that I'm missing here? And if the response is, and I have heard this, I don't know what you want from our friendship, maybe we should just put it all on hold. It's like a dagger, clearly. I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt. It hurts a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
But I have to respect that person doesn't have the words to express what it is, or prefers not to. And there's nothing I can do.
Okay, but when a friend is holding back, okay? So, and I've been in this situation where a friend has been behaving in a way which I have found hurtful, or not even hurtful, actually. I had a friend who was a very good friend and a very close friend, and she would always speak to me in a way which, for her, she was a very blunt person as well. She was very honest, and she would tell me things like, I think you should go to the hairdresser more often, because when you do, your hair looks lovely. And she really was speaking from her heart. But I have my own insecurities about my looks. And so every time she would say that, I'm not hearing her say that I look lovely. I'm hearing her say, you look miserable the rest of the time when your hair isn't done. Right. My insecurities, right? Nothing to do with her, because she's speaking, because she's sharing something which she believes is good for me to know, and she's trying to give me a compliment, but I'm taking it the other way because I've got my insecurities, right? And so for me, every time she would say that, it would be like a dagger to me, like, just go sort yourself out because you look ugly and awful otherwise. That's how I'm hearing it, even though that's definitely not what she's trying to tell me. Okay, so I've got my insecurities, and what I'm not able to do is tell her, please don't tell me that, because it's touching a nerve with me and I can't be honest with her. But what it did was it started building up some resentment within me. This is my emotional baggage. Nothing to do with her, my emotions. But next thing you know, we have another issue in our friendship. And because I'm already carrying this emotional baggage around with me, I am now venting at her, because it's just like, oh, you always make me feel not good about myself. But it's not true. I'm making myself not feel good about myself. When you've got a friend who's not honest with you, how does it affect you? Is it their stuff or is it your stuff? Are you able to work through that in your mind?
I think I am able to. So there is obviously the saying and the hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, yes, of course, we're always going to hear things from our own perspective. But I feel like I'm old enough now, and I feel like I've been quite adult from quite a young age to understand these dynamics. Sometimes your emotions have no bearing on everything that's going on. I'm very aware that my emotions and my feelings are of no matter. What you're saying, what you're feeling, I don't know what you want from our friendship. I think we should just put it on hold. That to me means that your feelings about this are not important to me. I can't hear it any other way because I tried every other way to understand, and I've reached out on more than one occasion to say, is there something that I have missed here? As tactfully and as gently as possible. This is what I'm feeling. Can we talk about it? But that answer makes me understand your feelings are not important, and therefore that friendship is not important to me anymore.
No, so I understand. So it sounds like that friend that you're referring to is more like who I was in the relationship that I was describing, right? Where she's unable to be honest with you about what's going on for her with whatever dynamic you've got going on with the two of you. It sounds like you would have liked to have worked on that relationship, right?
Definitely.
Right.
I would have liked to, because I genuinely approach friendships from the perspective of an interaction.
Yeah.
And we give each other things.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you have friends that you want to go to the theatre with, and you have friends that you can travel with, and you have friends that you just go for a lunch and it's fun.
Yeah.
But I also know that I couldn't travel with this person, or I couldn't take this person to any party, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there are parameters with all our friendships.
Absolutely.
Some more than others. And so I'm always aware of that. And I also, if I'd cross the line, for example, and go on holiday with somebody who I probably already knew was not the best travel companion, my fault. Okay. Done. But then when I try to say, well, X, Y, and Z, I felt X, Y, and Z, and that person is not interested to hear anything. And it's not about you did this and you did that. No. But it's like, well, I would really prefer it if we both did the driving, for example, or whatever it is. And then I get shut down for all of even wanting to have an equal status, let's say. Then I know that their expectation is that you're here for this and nothing else. And I get it. Okay, so if that's what I'm here for you, I don't want to be part of this anymore. So I'm getting a lot better, I would say, at recognizing those signs and thinking, all right, well, do I choose to continue with that friendship because she's a great person to go to the cinema with, or he's a great person to go to the gym with for that and nothing else? Super. But real friendships should be based on an ability to communicate, and also to be able to say, well, I know this person's going through a lot right now. Yeah. I'm just here. I'm here. If I can do something, let me know. And often that's appreciated. Yeah. But not always.
Okay, so what you're defining now is that there are different levels of friendship, aren't there?
Yeah.
And each type of friend that we have, there are certain boundaries. So you are the friend who, it's not the most intimate relationship, but you're the friend who I go to the gym with, you're the friend I go to the theatre with. And what I don't do now, and it sounds like this is something that you've learnt the hard way, is I don't cross that boundary of trying to take this any further, or I'll try and push the boundary a bit, and when I realise it doesn't work, I'll just bring it back to you are my theatre friend or you are my gym buddy, right? Okay. But those intimate relationships that we're describing now, what happens when a friend is going through a tough time? What happens when they can't be the friend you need them to be? How do you know? Firstly, what if they're not honest with you because they can't own their stuff? How do you know when it's worth holding on, when it's worth letting go? How do you know? How do you know when to call it quits, or when to keep working at it? When to forgive if they've acted out in a way? How do you know? How do you manage all of that?
Well, my default is to try harder. That's always been my default. I guess that's just what I understood I needed to do, try harder. And I do know from myself that when I go into a friendship, when I'm with, so whatever I'm doing with the friend, however I'm socializing, I'm always aware of what their likes are, what kind of restaurants they want to go to, what kind of shows they'd go and see, or whatever environment it is. Do they drink? Do they don't drink? Will they meet? Do they meet? Whatever it is. I think of that when we're doing whatever it is we're doing. If what I have found, though, is that I don't get that courtesy, let's put it like that thought very often in return.
Okay.
So, and that's possibly because I'm over trying. I'm over making sure that I've thought about this and I've thought about that and I've thought about the other. But actually, people don't work that way. They just do what they want to do, and whatever, you tag along, and if you're happy with it, you are, and if you're not, you're not.
Or are you choosing the right friend?
Probably not. So now I've realized that actually it's okay to have some new ones, and to probably establish these
boundaries.
Yes, boundaries early on.
Okay. And
the friendships that have maintained through ups and downs are the ones where the boundaries have been crossed, and then we have worked it out because they want to know if they do care if it's not working out. But the ones who don't care, then they don't care.
Is it that they don't care? I'm not sure. I think that's harsh. That's harsh. I don't know if people don't care. I think sometimes, I know for me, I've had various issues with friends over the years where a friend has said something or I've said something. And I don't think I think timing has a lot to do with things. So I recently had an issue with a friend where, I was trying to be helpful, and okay, I definitely crossed a boundary. I was giving feedback on something, and she came back at me and she said, you're trying to pull me down to break my confidence. I just thought, okay, I would never do that. That's not who I am. That's not who I've ever been. I'm trying to help you with something in your work, and I'm giving you feedback because I actually think this is my belief, and you don't have to listen to me. I'm just giving you feedback. Now, it wasn't welcomed. Absolutely my mistake. And but then what she showed me was the side of her of where it was, if this is what you think of me, how long have you been thinking that? Okay, for me, you're not someone I really want in my life anymore, because if this is who you truly think I am, we're not friends, because my friends know I would only ever want the good for them. And if I'm giving feedback, it's to help them, not to hurt them. Okay, fine. So let's say that's the situation. But what if this friend is going through a hard time? What if this friend is able to come back at me and say, do you know what? I screwed up. I was in a bad place. You pressed a button in me, and I can't cope with that. I've now got to find it in myself to forgive, right? No? Well,
I think it's not about forgiveness. I think it's about to understand. Because there is that thing about the hearing and the listening, isn't it? To saying and the hearing. So if that person genuinely comes back and says, you know what, I'm sorry, I was very mad and I didn't mean it, then it is about understanding. It's about you saying, well, I can see why you would have been upset. Yeah. As long as you accept that I didn't mean that, then that's fine. But if they're like, no, and you're always like this, and then that's a whole different thing. Do you see what I mean? So it is about the hearing and the listening and how they hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
And I remember an incident a couple of years ago where I went into a shop with a friend. She wanted to buy a gift for one of her colleagues. We were in Spain. I speak Spanish. And I genuinely thought I was helping by asking for what she wanted and explaining whatever. So anyway, the item was bought and we left. And instead of saying, oh, that was so nice of you, Aviva, thank you so much. I mean, she could have managed, obviously, with, gestures and whatever, but I thought I'd ease it along by saying, well, do you have it in this size, this color, whatever. She said, well, you just took over that whole thing, didn't you? And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I think you thought you were trying to be helpful, but you just took over the entire transaction. And I thought, wow, okay. So are you just misinterpreting it on purpose? Because why do you think that I would take over? I wouldn't say, okay, now just buy it. I would never say that. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted? Do you see what I mean?
Completely. But me as a therapist, when you tell me that, what I'm hearing is this is someone who struggles with control issue, right? So this has got nothing to do with you. You know, you're doing your best and that's absolutely fine. But for her, you've taken control of a situation she wanted to have control over. And to me, as I said, I don't know that her, and I obviously it's very easy for me to sit here, years later and not now having spoken to her to try and guess. But as I said, as a therapist, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing this is someone who you've pressed a button, but it's her button. It's nothing to do with you. Okay. So when do we make space for our friends to have buttons? Because we all have buttons. I have mine. God knows. I have plenty of them, like a Fisher-Price toy. And so when we've got those buttons and our friends have buttons, when is it okay to have the buttons and when is it not?
Well, that's actually quite right. Because it's like, okay, do I always have to defer to your buttons? Do I always have to be super aware that if I say X or Y, you're going to go off on a thing? Because that's exhausting, actually. And that is not friendship. That is not a friendship.
I'm going to challenge you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because some people would say, but that is friendship.
Is it?
As I said,
is it an easy friendship? Is it a flowing friendship? Is it one that will grow and prosper? If you are constantly thinking, okay, don't say this because so and so, don't mention the war, whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like, do I always have to be? Are you aware of mine? Do you care?
Okay.
Do you see? That's the point. So if I, for example, let's say you're on a diet. And I'm not going to say to you, okay, well, we're going to go and have pizza. I know you're going to have a salad, but too bad. Of course not. See what I mean? So buttons, do I know that this upsets you? Then I'm going to bear that in mind. But if the goalpost keeps changing because there's another button and that I didn't know about and another one, then you have to say, actually, I'm exhausted. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I mean, let's just go to a movie where we don't have to speak and then we can leave because it's easier, right?
Okay, so I'm what they call a third culture kid, right? So I grew up in England, moved to France, and because of that, I lost a lot of my friends, right? And when I came back to England, I was in my early 20s. I got married. My husband wasn't very well and I didn't like sharing what was going on for myself with my friends. So I kept them at a distance. And I know that was on me, nothing to do with them. I kept them at a distance. I isolated myself. It's not that I was isolated. I did it to myself. But then once my marriage ended, I all of a sudden had this new forum where I needed friends and I wanted friends and I allowed friendships to evolve and grow. And I have these two girlfriends and they have seen me through, they've seen the worst of me and they have seen me through the worst. And for as much as, you say you don't want to be with friends who are exhausting, whatever. If my friends didn't have that, if they had that attitude, firstly, I wouldn't have anyone in my life. I'd be miserable and very lonely. Sometimes it's those friendships when someone sticks with you. They help you to evolve. They help you to grow. These girlfriends, I could rage. I could be awful. They would put me in my place consistently and for a long time. But they've helped me to get over a lot of stuff that went on for me and helped me to grow as a person. And so I understand when you say, you don't think some friendships, they're exhausting or it's a lot of effort. But at the same time, we need that sometimes. We need those people by our side to be those friends. And sometimes we need to be that friend who can be there, hold your hand through the darkness, even though it's a really, really long tunnel and an exhausting one.
I agree, but it's also very hard to be on the outside of that.
Yeah.
To show warmth and to show interest and to be constantly rebuffed because there are things that maybe I'm not aware of. Yeah. For example, difficulties, whatever. I mean, I've had a friend who called me very recently to tell me, Aviva, it's not because, I don't love you, but I'm you don't realize this, my marriage, X, Y, and Z. But I never felt bad about that because I'd already been on the outside of it and I was getting an inkling.
Yeah.
So to me, I just think that's okay to be understanding here. And by the way, if you want to share something with me, please do. And if you don't, I'll respect it, even though they're close friends. So because some people don't want to speak, especially men. They can't speak in the same way as women share. And that's also fine. But it is hard to be on the outside of it when you really don't know, when you know nothing. And then sometimes it can lead to a breakdown of a friendship because you can only ask so many times.
Yeah,
you can only show up or make a suggestion to do something without being too intrusive. Because there's the other thing, like, oh, you just took over. Do you see what I mean? So it's a balance of like, okay, am I being intrusive now? Am I taking over? What am I? It's about finding a balance of how much you can ask and how when to step back and say, okay, you know what, I'm here. Let me just you let me know when you're around. It's hard, and it's actually hard to be on the outside a lot, and I think I mentioned it again, but being a single person makes the situation, and a single woman also, by the way, is kind of a threat to some environments where when people are in couples, I did notice, especially when I was maybe 15, 20 years younger, that it's odd to have the single woman at the table or to be only invited alone with no other friends. Just like, okay, just come and have dinner with us. Lovely to see you. But then be the only person there. And never have other people because, I mean, it's flattering. You want to spend so much time, on a one-to-one. But often it's because the dynamic for them is wrong. Like, you're the single woman, you're the unknown quantity, so we're not going to mix you with everybody else, although we do care for you. So
is that something that you know for a fact that's what they're thinking, or is that something which you're feeling?
I think it's, well, when it happens a lot, then I have to imagine what the reason could be. And sometimes it is clear that's the reason. But sometimes it's not. I think I have to continue to be sensitive to people. And I have to be... But sometimes I just think maybe it's just easier for me to just not try so hard. Because it is tiring, and then... There's the hurt aspect, so it's a protection as well. Okay, well, you know what? They know where I am. The door is open. Or I just have some people who just naturally move on. And sometimes, even though I enjoy their company so much, if they are naturally choosing to move along by, to quote, to ghost me, all right. Sometimes they're not important enough to me to try to pursue it and to find out why. I respect. We're moving on, and that's also fine. Hurtful, considering all the nice times we had together, all the really great connections we had. But sometimes I don't even go there. I just leave it because you can only be so blunt with so many people.
No, absolutely, and I think those closer friends, those are the ones where you're going to put more of that effort in to find out, because that's going to have you questioning more than the ones who are a little bit less close. We all have those different levels of friendship, right?
And you know what? You don't need so many of them.
No.
We don't need to be social butterflies. We don't need a friend for every moment of our lives and every occasion.
Do you think that's something that you learn with age? Because it's definitely something which I've understood more with age, that I found that it's awful, but I think I've shed a few friends over the years because when I was younger, I needed the hundreds of friends around. I don't know if it was validation or it was just working out who I was, whereas now I'm a little bit more secure, and therefore I think my values and what I want out of a friendship is so much more defined in my mind that I'm a little bit less willing to give too much of my time to friendships which don't serve me in the way that... sounds awful, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't, actually. And it goes back to what your daughter was saying.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend time with this person anymore, Mummy. And for whatever the reasons that she had, she recognized that her time was more important spent with other friends or her family or whatever it was. She got it right there.
It's true. It's amazing how as we age, we become more, the nuances change, and therefore we become more open, but we go through so much, don't we? And then it takes us a little while to get back to that simplicity of, this is a friendship which is really healthy. This is a friendship which really works for me. And therefore I'm going to put all the effort in. And because you're putting the effort in as well, it's working and it's great. But this isn't working, and so I'm going to let it go, and that's okay. Maybe.
But I also feel like if you're with somebody and you feel good in their presence, and there's a laugh and there's a joke and there's an ease, it's so much more energizing, isn't it, than being with people that you constantly have to think about what you're saying and who you're talking about, and you're not allowed to. I know who I'd rather spend my time with, and I know who I'd rather be alone, to be honest, than have to think about all those things that I'm supposed to say or not. And so I tend to the light, to the easygoing.
You gravitate.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. And time is finite, so.
And I think there is that thing of, as we age, you do learn, you have certain tools, don't you? There are these friends who you call up and you say, I need a moan, I need a vent, or I'm going to call you now and I need you to just make me laugh because my life is miserable right now. I need you to make me laugh, right? There are certain friends who you can call on.
And those are the great ones. Those are the great ones to have.
Those are the ones, the low maintenance friendships. Yeah. But when you need them, they're there for you in the way that you need them.
Exactly.
That's the key, isn't it? But how do you know that you're keeping them for the right reasons and not keeping them because of a loyalty issue?
Does it keep you awake at night? Do you worry about it? Do you think, oh, maybe? To me, it's like if there is it just flows. If it flows and I just know I can phone them or I can text them, those are the ones. If I have to think about, oh, shall I put it this way or that way? That to me is the answer. It's just the ones who I can just feel free and at ease with. And those are the ones I will maintain and make the effort to.
I like that. And on that note, I am going to thank you so much for today, because I think you've shown us very much, you've given me a great insight into, how our values play into our friendships, how important our values are, and actually identifying how we take time identifying what our values are. And once we know that, we can identify our friends through that lens, can't we?
Exactly. Just remember your daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.